that even as an artist, our lives have to be complete. If not, I'm going to work day after day, not bringing anything new to the table, not being a whole person, a happy person. And we have seen those sets. We have worked with those actors that are just miserable. They're miserable.
And they don't know how to be happy.
And they don't know how to be
they
happy.
make
Yeah.
everybody, they want everybody to join them.
Yeah.
Welcome to Write for the Role, the podcast. I'm your host, John Frank Levey. Thanks for joining me as I sit down with my friends and colleagues to explore their journeys to discover the roles they're right for professionally and personally. As you listen, it's my greatest hope that you'll find inspiration and motivation to embrace the roles in your life you were always meant to play. And now I'd like to introduce my guest. She's an actor, a director, a writer, a producer, a tastemaker, a wife, and a mother. You probably first saw my guest on Dawson's Creek as Gretchen Witter, or perhaps it was on NCIS as Caitlin Todd. She also starred as Rizzoli Isles on Rizzoli Isles, and she's been a guest star on dozens of popular shows, including Shameless, when I cast her as Helene Runyon, Lip's professor and lover. If you haven't already guessed today, I'm speaking with Sasha Alexander. Interestingly enough, like me, she has a side gig, interviewing her notable friends and colleagues. And Sasha, in 2010, I did my second trip to Europe. I had gone to Europe in 1969 or 70, and it took me all those 40 years to go again. And it changed my life in a million ways. But most importantly, we were in the Piedmonte area of Italy, where the Barolo wines and all of their cousins are made. And we were there in truffle season. And I can't drink California wine anymore.
I can't either.
No, Italian wine changed my palate completely. We went on from there through the Swiss Alps to Burgundy, and we obviously drank some French wine, but I can't afford any of those wines. But the Italian wines are so great. And I know that you grew up in a Serbian-Italian family. I don't know whether your parents or grandparents were immigrants or whether they were, and please tell me. But and then later you married into a European family, and I wondered how your association with Europe has impacted your taste, your acting style, your aesthetic, your sensibility.
Well, first of all, John, I'm happy to see you and be here with you. So thank you for having me.
Thank you.
We have a lot of history together, and so it's very special to have this be a full circle moment and to be able to have these conversations now. First, I will say I also cannot drink California wine, but not because the Italian and European wine is not just tastier, but because the California wine, I'm allergic to it.
Wow.
There's something in the grapes here that have caused me to have these, like, really, truly, like, my eyes will flame up, and I didn't know that. And now I can't do it anymore. So it's just something with the pollen or something to do with California wine. But that said, that is a great question. And thank you for that question, because I think, I grew up, even though I was born in Los Angeles, my parents were both immigrants, and I was sent back and lived in Europe in Belgrade with my grandparents for the first 2 years of my life. And then the next years, up until the time I was 14 or 15, I spent a good 5 months a year there, traveling and staying with my grandparents. My parents divorced when I was 5. And it was just, my mom was a single mom. She was working. And I think it was just a lot easier for me to go there. And so they didn't really abide by the whole, this is when school's actually out and when it comes back. I was a little bit on my own in terms of, I like to say like a latchkey kid, even just after school, my mom would drop me off and she'd go back to work. And so I would be at home watching Three's Company and the Jeffersons and whatever else. And so those were kind of very formative years for me. But Europe, I would say, the earliest films that I watched were sitting down with my grandparents and watching old movies and television, and a lot of European television and reading, a lot of literature from there and here. So I am definitely very influenced in every way. It's interesting when you're raised in the US, everything is about being American. Even foreigners that come here, the parents usually or the grandparents want you to just be American, to integrate into this society and so forth. And so I definitely am a victim of that. And I say a victim because I think our identities are all shaped by the people and places and experiences that we have in our life. And so for a long time, I think I was embarrassed of that. I was embarrassed that I had this whole other life. My mother would pick me up and speak another language, and I'd be like, just speak English. Don't do that. And so I really denied that piece of a big piece of myself until I hit like right after high school, and I realized that I really liked it. And it was a huge part of how I thought and saw the world. And it's just a different way of I don't know, some of the things that they do in Europe in terms of, it's, I don't want to say that it's deeper. That's not it, but it just has less boundaries on it. It's less of a formulaic way of creating art. There's no rules to it. And so something about that style and emotionality and really appealed to me. So I think that it has influenced me in many ways. I'm married to an Italian, Eduardo, and they're all very Italian, my family. And so it has now in my adult life continued to just be something that I think influences every aspect of my taste, my home, the way I raise my kids, my value system, and also the kinds of things that we're drawn to in our work. So.
Absolutely. The title of my book, as you well know, is Right for the Role. And how we become right for the roles that we end up playing is very much about our sensibilities, which are created by the things that you've just been talking about. I won't sing because Sing Johnny One Note was written for me, but it reminds me of West Side Story. I want to be in America.
America.
And I said I won't sing, and then I did. That was terrible. But one of the things I think that has characterized your work is a kind of bravery, a willingness. In my book, I say that there are two kinds of actors: the kind that say "I get to" and embrace the role that they're about to play with their full self, and then there's the other kind of actors who say "I have to." Who would ever play Medea if or anybody like that? And you had a lesbian kiss on Dawson's Creek a long time ago when that was pretty controversial. And certainly the work you did on Shameless for me was astonishingly brave and free and willing. You are the kind of actress that says I get to with every fiber of your being, and I that's what made me fall in love with your work and with your energy and essence.
Well, John, that means so much coming from you because, I just recall being on this little train of, auditioning every day and having costumes in the back of my car and running over to Warner Brothers. And, the casting director that you wanted to get into was John Levey. How do you get John Levey to see you? And I remember that so vividly. And I remember reading for you, and I do remember sitting outside in that hallway and the nerves that I had. And I think what always brought me back to, you know, to the thing I love about it the most is like there is this enormous fear around it. It is scary to jump into something that is not who you are. I mean, no matter what, you hear the greatest actors talk about it, and at some point, there's some fear around doing something that isn't you. That you have to step outside yourself and expose yourself. And I just remember going in for you for Presidio Med, which was maybe not the first time. Maybe I'd gone in before, but I feel like that was it because I remember we pre-read and I went in for this John Wells series, and then I came back to read with you. And one of the things that I just recall saying to myself was, they don't care who you are. They just want to know that you're the role.
Absolutely.
Like they don't. I mean, it's not you don't, that you don't care, but you don't. You're casting a role. It's not you want whoever comes in to succeed. And so I just vividly remember it was such a breakthrough for me because in that moment and I had this wonderful acting coach, Tom Todoroff at the time. And I just remember saying, I'm not really comfortable when I walk in and I try to be Sasha and try to have a chit chat and then jump into character. It's just not how I work. And he said, well, then don't go in character. Just go in and do your thing and don't worry about it. And so I remember staying in that character and going in and feeling a bit strange because I thought, well, I might not have been very polite because I was in the role of this character, which in that show was a very kind of, arrogant, hotshot, young plastic surgeon. And I was young for the role. I was only 27. I think the role was written for somebody in their 30s. And so there was a few, things, but I remember reading with you and I just remember at that moment, the joy that I had was actually in taking the risk. There was something just very, hello, Margot. Doggies in the way. You want to be right for the role, Margot? Are you right for the role?
Oh my, yes, she is.
So anyway, it means a lot coming from you because I know your taste in actors and I know the kinds of shows that you have cast, and for the kinds of creators that you work for and producers you work for. It's really actors that one have a humanity, can play many things. It's not just that they're dramatic and take themselves seriously. And it's not just that they can be funny. They're human. They're a whole being. And we know that even in drama and the most dramatic moments, having some sense of humor, having some other point of view on it, and the ability to do that is human. That's how people react. And some of the most difficult moments, human beings are complicated. And so anyway, I thank you for that. I mean, I definitely was very, it was a big jump with Shameless. It was scary because of the nudity and so forth, but I also wasn't afraid of nudity. As a European person, I'm more afraid of violence and horror than I am of nudity, frankly. So I knew I would be in good hands with the wonderful team there. And I knew that you were all very classy people that would just do it the best it can be done. And so I was very excited about that. But that's a series that, as you know, really requires the actor to be just let it go. You don't know where the camera is at any time. It's not planned out. You got to go with it and you got to just hope for the best. And so,
it's aptly named. It's Shameless.
Yeah, it is. It really is. And
I was reading the newspaper. I might be the last person in America who actually gets the newspaper and delivered in the morning. But I was reading the paper this morning and I saw that SAG-AFTRA has just brought on the intimacy coordinators. Was there an intimacy coordinator when you did Shameless?
No.
What do you think about the advent of intimacy coordinators, because not everybody is classy and knowledgeable, and not every scene partner is a well-adjusted, healthy adult. And I'm sure that Shameless in other hands could have turned into a lawsuit every day, and it didn't. What do you think about intimacy
Well,
coordinators?
I have mixed feelings, and I'll tell you, because as an actor and as a director now, I have worked with intimacy coordinators. So at the time with Shameless, because it is such a classy bunch, and because they run a very tight ship, I had felt totally supported, because it would be a closed set. Nobody was allowed in. The director, it was all blocked out. Nobody was able to even look over at the monitor and see something that they shouldn't see. So the way it was all handled was all very, very comfortable, and also very communicative, where the Wells team and the director would come and sort of, we would walk it through. Let's say we'd have an understanding about where we were, what could be seen, what could not be seen. So everything was done in such a professional way that it felt like there was an intimacy coordinator. So my experience was perfect. Then cut to, we get intimacy coordinators, right? And so what is strange, and I was directing on, I think it was on You, and there was a scene between two people in bed, and really nothing was even going on. I mean, I don't want to say that. There was some petting, let's say, but they were both postcoital in bed. And what was difficult was that now there was this woman who I didn't know as the director. The cast sort of knew, and she was the only one allowed to talk to the actors. So I could not, as the director, go to them and say, can you please turn this way or that way so I can see this or that? I had to tell that person, and then that person tells them. On one hand, whatever makes the actors comfortable is great, as long as we get it. But it is an extra hoop to jump over. And so,
Yes, I think we all
as an
played that
actress,
game.
I think,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
yes. No, but as an actress, I would appreciate it, because I have been in situations where the male director's coming over to me wanting something from me. And I remember specifically once there was something where he decided to add this kind of montage of lovemaking, which exposed me more than what was on the page. He was being artistic about it, but I wasn't told that that's what it was going to be. So my concern became, wow, all of a sudden now I'm having to move around, which you're going to possibly see more breast than we planned. You might see more this than we planned. And now I'm trusting this person I'd never worked with to make that decision. And I remember having to say, I'm not sure that I want to do it that way. And so what we decided to do was basically look at what he wanted to cut together, and then we would move into that position. We wouldn't roll the camera. We'd move into that position, we'd film it, and then we'd stop, and then we'd move it in the next position. And that way he could cut it together, but it didn't expose me.
Right.
But I had to make that happen. And that's not always a very comfortable position, to have to tell the director no in that moment that you're acting. And so I do ultimately think it is a positive thing. I just think that they really need to be, they need to work, they need to be very communicative with the director and have a good relationship, and also with the actors, so that it doesn't feel like there's too many people talking to the actors in the middle of a scene.
Absolutely.
So it's tricky.
I completely agree with you. I mean, the whole idea that the director, as I started to say, and forgive me for interrupting you, but we all played that stupid game of telephone when we were little kids.
Right.
And we know from experience that by the time it gets all the way around the room, the message has changed.
Yes.
And that I'm sure happens between a director and then the intimacy coordinator and back to the actors. And we want to make sure that the communication is clear and clean. I got very experienced talking about nudity and simulated sex during auditions, because we had literally had a form that everybody had to fill out so that there was never any mistake about it.
Right.
And then, people agreed to participate openly, and that produced the wonderful results that we got over 11 years. I want to change the subject a little bit for the moment and just say, you've done these long-running series, Rizzoli Isles. You also were on NCIS and Dawson's, and then you did 11 episodes that aired and 14 that were shot of the show that you mentioned for me and for John, of Presidio Med. Can you talk a little bit about what was in common about those roles and what might be different about different demands made on you as a performer?
Well, I think every show is very different because it depends on who's running it. So I think in terms of the roles, I feel they were all very different, in the sense that the stories that we were telling in them were different. Dawson's was a wonderful project because you had all these young actors. We were telling stories about being teenagers and being young adults, and it's about the families. And so there was something very relatable about that moment in our lives. And also shooting in Wilmington, North Carolina, which is just a glorious place. There was something very magical about that whole series. We weren't on stages a lot. We were out in these beautiful settings at the sunset. And so there were, I don't know, it was a lot, there was a lot of atmosphere on that show, which I enjoyed very much. And I felt added so much to the scenes. And then, NCIS, what else do we say? So NCIS was a very, very challenging job because the hours were really long. The scripts were broken up. You'd get the first act, but not know what the rest of it was. So you'd shoot that, and then you shoot the next thing. So I was just working, 80-hour weeks, and it was just very, very difficult to play any role because you just were getting through it. And that just wasn't fun for me. Like, what I love about acting is that we get the opportunity to tell a story, figure out these characters, find the layers, do the research, rehearse it, do all these things so that by the time that you're performing it, you are at least at a place where you feel what you're giving is everything you can give. When you have no rehearsal and you are reading, you just got the pages and you're walking on set while somebody's doing your hair and you're rolling within 10 minutes, you're just surviving. You're just getting it out. So on that show, that's fine. It was a procedural show that didn't rely on these layers of character, right? I mean, they did a great job in editing where they would create that, and they were brilliant at doing that. But as an actor, I found it very unfulfilling. It wasn't satisfying to me. I would leave the day and not be satisfied.
I had a kind of similar experience on a wonderful show, an iconic show, a historic show, The West Wing,
Yeah.
where we also, you'd get a scene, and there'd be a senator, a Republican senator who ate too many pork chops, and then I'd call Aaron Sorkin and say, is this a one scene part, or is this in Act 1 or Act 4, or is there more coming? And he would generally say, I don't know.
Oh, no.
And I would just think, I love Aaron and he's a genius, but his process doesn't really give anybody else an opportunity to have a process. And it's sort of miraculous that the seasons that Aaron ran The West Wing are as brilliant as they are. And it's a testimony to the performers and the editors and everybody.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you're quite right, because you're in a survival mode. And
Yeah.
at the end of season 2 of The West Wing, after I had done the pilot in the first 2 seasons and won 2 Emmys and was proud as hell to be associated with it, I went to John Wells and I said, "Let me out of here.
Yeah.
I can't do
Yeah.
this."
Yeah. But the thing about NCIS that I'll say that was a learning when you say sort of what's similar in these roles and so forth, I think at the end of the day, especially in television, it's all relationship, right? How do we build and create relationship? And whether that's in the audition room or whether it's a long running show, it's constantly building that and evolving those relationships. It was, to me, NCIS, and something that Don Belisario, the creator of it, understood was that the chemistry between these people spoke volumes. So even if I had no words, or if it was just a look over to the other character of like, this is, whatever it was, that was something he kept in. So he was brilliant to keep those moments in. So it gave the characters much more depth and interest on screen, and later went to the audience and what they cut together. But our experience of it was rather chaotic. And so, whereas on Shameless and also Rizzoli Isles, I didn't have that experience. My character on Rizzoli Isles, Maura Isles, was one of the most wonderful, wonderful women I ever had the chance to play. Because she was incredibly complicated, slightly Asperger's, very smart, but then had this deep pain from her childhood and so forth. So there was a lot of stuff going on. We had family drama, we were on crime scenes, we had best friend friendships, we had lovers. It was just fun. It had humor, it had drama. It was just, I really loved that playground. But the most difficult thing was the medical terminology. And I kept saying to the producers, wow, you guys are lucky you cast me, because what if you had cast somebody that couldn't memorize this? There was like chunks and monologues of just medical terms and stuff to spew out. No one ever said that's what the character was going to be. In the pilot, she didn't really do that, not at that level. And all of a sudden, the second script comes in, and it's like she just talks. It's like Tourette's. She just goes and goes and goes and keeps talking and talking and talking. And so it was a very difficult thing to learn to do. I spent on the average 2 hours, maybe 3 hours a day memorizing on top of my work. I'd come home. I would then take the scripts out and start going again. It was really, really difficult. And I just always laughed because I thought, wow, if you had cast an actor, because nobody told me that's what it was going to be, but what if you had cast somebody that actually couldn't do that? So that was what was really hard about that. Yeah, and then Shameless was a wonderful gift because it was such a different role than Maura Isles. I think the challenge in that was also in that moment that I was playing, because I was doing double duty, as you know, when I was playing Maura Isles, she was just much more buttoned up and much more. It was just a very different role. Whereas Helene was very open in an open marriage. She was very comfortable with her body, her sexuality. There was a looseness about her that was completely different from a physical standpoint. And so I think the challenge was for sure two things. One, for me to get into that state of mind, just physically with myself, uh, at that moment, and just kind of, I just felt like her body and how she used her body was just much more provocative than Maura Isles. And then the other part was also building a relationship with Jeremy, playing Lip, so that he had an intimidation with me, that he felt like I was this older woman that was a little untouchable, that he was intimidated by. And so I just remember meeting him and feeling like I really can't talk to him. Not him, Jeremy, but I need to isolate myself a bit and just really be in my space and not have an off-camera relationship for a little while until this is established on screen. And I don't know what that's going to be, right? We never really know. And that's the beauty, that it then forms into whatever that relationship is going to take form in. So yeah, they're all very different experiences.
But the thing they had in common is that they all came from you, and you are able to marry yourself with the needs of the character in an authentic way. And earlier you said that some characters are created outside yourself, something like that. And I actually think you find the way to marry some element of yourself, and you can kind of blow it up a little bit and to make it more prominent than maybe it is in your actual life. I hate having my picture taken. I always have. I'm so uncomfortable being the center of attention, I guess, that I always make funny faces. And there's a famous picture of me as a hippie with an orange traffic cone on my head. Imagine that. When it came time to have a picture taken for the flap of my memoir, Right for the Role, I was introduced to a photographer named Eusebio Hernandez. And he made me feel so comfortable and relaxed that we got a great shot. If you're looking for headshots, I strongly recommend that you contact Eusebio Hernandez, and his contact information is available on the show notes. Speaking of your actual life, when I was a young person in college, the women's movement happened, and of course it changed everything. For a young man, too. We had to figure out who the hell we were if you were going to be that. And all of the young women that I had relationships with in my late teens and early 20s thought my mom was the symbol of their ideal of feminism and of having it all. And sadly, they were wrong. My mother was a PhD scientist and had a full-time job, often in academic world, and also writing grants for the American Cancer Society, translating physicians' research into grants that would be acceptable. And she also was a wife and had two kind of complicated sons. I was the baby. And all of these young women thought, oh, God, your mother is the example of what my ideal is of having it all. And sadly, as I said, I think really she didn't have either the career she was capable of and dreamt about, or the successful relationship with her husband, my father. And in some ways, it damaged her relationship much more with my brother than with me. She and I were very close. You have, from the outside, it looks like you have a wonderful marriage and a great relationship with your children and a wide family life, and do all this traveling and all this wonderful, and you have this fabulous career that's now transitioning into directing as well as acting, and you have dreams of creating a business of styling your life and people's homes, and the importance of beauty. And I don't know, what's your reaction to that story of mine and my depiction of your life?
I think it's very interesting that you're asking me that question right now, because I've been thinking about this a lot recently, and also for the last several years. I've gone through a deeper understanding of what it means to be a woman that, has a family, has a career, has a marriage. How do you do it? And I actually have learned that you can't do it all well. That's the truth. And I really believe that. So I joke, that Sheryl Sandberg saying lean in. Yes, lean in, but then you also have to, I just want to say to all women that, it can't all be perfect, not at the same time. And so right before the pandemic, and after I finished Rizzoli Isles, I really wanted to be home with my kids. I wanted to see them wake up. I wanted to see them go to sleep. And I needed a minute to sort of recharge before jumping into the commitment of another series, because I knew what that meant. And also, my husband had been there for me. Eduardo was there for 7 years. Everything was around me, my schedule, the holidays, when I went to work, when I came home. everything. And I felt that it was only fair that I stepped back a little and he had the opportunity to do what he wanted to do. And so that's what we did. I think the mistake that I made was that I really thought I could have it all. I thought I could be home with the kids and do what I wanted to do as a parent with my children. And during COVID, as we know, children really needed their parents, and so I needed to be there for my kids and wanted to be there for my kids and for my husband and my family. And that was my first priority. And every job that came in was something that was asking me to go, out of the country and be there for 6 months or 7 months and not be able to come home to see my kids. And I just couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. There was a lot of frustration with that. And a lot of frustration and a lot of I felt depressed about it. I felt like I was never going to work again. I was never going to do anything again. It's impossible to do both. How do I manage this? And I just wasn't very kind to myself during that. I think that now I look back and I wish that I had just been a little kinder to myself, to be able to have had the courage to say to my representatives, I'm so sorry. I just got to be home with my family. Just give me a little time. But I never said those words. I never said that. I would just not do the project because it was far away, or I would. And so I just didn't feel like I understood how difficult it was to try to do everything.
Yeah.
And
I think you've
now
encapsulated it so perfectly, because the sentence that really rings for me is, you can't have it all at the same time.
No.
But I think, speaking of being kind to yourself, you have had it all, just not all at the same time.
No, and you know what, John, I will tell you, like, I am in a great marriage, and my children and I are incredibly close. And my daughter just went off to college, and I feel so grateful that I was here these years. And it was the moment that I dropped her off. It's going to make me cry, but it was the moment that I dropped her off that I went, oh my gosh, like, I'm here with her in exactly the way I wanted to be. Because I didn't leave for that job in Australia, and I didn't leave for that job in Canada, where I couldn't have been there for her to have the conversations that needed to be had. So for me, I just sort of went, wow, like, when I'm sitting there in my rocking chair one day in my life, I'm going to look back and I'm not going to sort of think, oh, wow, I missed out on that TV gig that I could have had, or that little movie thing I could have done. I will be sitting there with my children and my family and friends and colleagues and people who genuinely understand that even as an artist, our lives have to be complete. If not, I'm going to work day after day, not bringing anything new to the table, not being a whole person, a happy person. And we have seen those sets. We have worked with those actors that are just miserable. They're miserable.
They don't know how to be happy,
and they don't know how to be
they
happy.
make
Yeah.
they want everybody to join them.
Yeah. And I think that as you say, the whole stuff that, the projects that I'm doing outside of this, I think part of that is also the pursuit of creativity and finding other things to love. When our business has shifted, things are slower. It's not just my age, it's also the industry has shifted. And I see that. So I'm not like, there's not a pity party of like, oh my gosh, I've gotten to that age where actresses don't work. I actually don't think that at all. I actually think there's wonderful roles for women of all ages. I just think that the business has also changed. And so sometimes I think the most difficult thing of being an actor is to accept that there's ebbs and flows, right? That there's going to be times when it's going great, and then there's going to be times when you might not fit into that puzzle, and that's okay. But
yeah, I completely agree with you. Again, it's just so fascinating to me that you talk about the pursuit of creativity. That's why I'm doing this.
yes,
Because for whatever reasons, I'm more available to do something like this than I used to be, and I'm so grateful to to Trudy and to Jared for pushing me into it, and for helping me with Trudy for helping me with the book, because it's given me a focus. And then the other part of what you were just talking about is having adult children is amazing. My daughter is in her mid-30s and is a special ed teacher in Denver with a wonderful partner. And every time she comes to visit, it's such a delight. And my son is married here with in town and is a post-production guy. And when he comes over to my house, when he's in Burbank, visiting a post house or something, and I get 15 minutes alone with him, it's so spectacular and fun. And you have that to look forward to. And
Yeah.
it's reaping the fruits of all of the giving that parenting is about. Yeah,
Yes.
what you have in store for you, I'm happy to report, is that there's a period coming where you're going to be doing more getting than giving.
Mm. Well, that's beautiful. And I look at sometimes I look at some actors that go from job to job to job, and I know their families and their children and so forth. And everyone is different, depending where you live and who's at home with your kids and what your kids are like. It doesn't, everyone is different. But I don't look at that and sort of go, wow, I wasn't able to do that. Like, I can't do it that way. I can't just do everything at 10% and be fine with it. I'm just not that person. When I'm with my children, I'm just with them. I don't want to be on my phone. I don't want to be doing a million other things. I just, it tires me out. And so, and the same thing when we're on set and we devote ourselves or on a project, when we devote ourselves to that, I'm also not, entirely available for my kids. And so we just have to pick our times and understand individually what is that thing that's going to fill our bucket and bring us happiness and joy and peace in our life. And we all need that. So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I wanted to ask you one other thing. First of all, you're polylingual. How many languages do you speak?
Mm. Well, I speak Serbo-Croatian, Serbian. Um, I I'm not fluent in Italian and French, but if I went and lived there, I would be. So
Right.
I understand everything. My children speak French. Eduardo is, French, Italian, and English. And so, he's not American, but he speaks it. So there's a lot of languages going on in our home at all times.
How fun.
But yes, yeah.
I'm the ugly American. I only speak English, and I've worked hard not to sound like the New Yorker that I actually am. But Uh, I just so appreciate the opportunity to talk to you today, and just love your candor and your openness, and I'm so not surprised, because it's the central thing that I saw in you as an actress, and as I've gotten to know you a little bit as a person, it's the central thing about you. I always end the conversation by playing a little game that my mom played with me when I was a little boy. And she said to me, Johnny, say 3 words to say who you are. Sasha, say 3 words to say who you are.
What would I sort of think of what would Eduardo say about me more than what I would say about me. Um, I'm grounded. I am. Um, hmm, I don't know. That's hard. I think he, I think intuitive and and he would probably say, I've got grit. is that a word? He'd say
Yeah.
that I have an edge. He always goes, you're edgy. But I think what he means by that is that I'm not afraid to draw outside the lines. I don't do things by the book. I don't live my life um, by the book. I'm not very, very influenced by other people's. I don't want to say opinions. Of course, like anybody else, I want to be liked, and I care about that, But it won't really influence my choices in my life.
Yeah.
So I don't. I think in that regard, I have I'm a little tough. I'm tough that way. Maybe it's my Serbianness. There's like a stubbornness about going, well, nobody really knows. We're all individuals. We know who we are and what's right for us. And so be it, So I think that part of me is very, uh, yeah, I guess.
You bring to mind the Joni Mitchell line about I don't like weak women because I get bored too quick, and I don't like strong women because they're hip to my tricks. Something along those lines.
Exactly that.
Yeah, but I think most of us really crave someone who will push back and meet us at least halfway, and sometimes crawl into our half. And you certainly have that bravery and that passion and that freedom, and I've always admired that.
Thank you, John. Thank you. And
Thanks for joining us, Sash.
thank you so much. And it's anybody that, as actors, we know that we go on this journey, and along the way we have those moments in our career. As when we started this, I told you, when we, there's people you want to meet, you think, oh, they'll change my career if I meet this person and he likes me, or this woman likes me, or this thing happens, or this director casts me. And the reality of that is, yes, there is that beauty in dreaming like we do in our business, right? We're dreamers and we like it. And there is that opportunity. But at the end of the day, it's our ability to have the skill and professionalism and talent, I hope, to be able to be in rooms with wonderful talents like you. And hopefully there's that project and that moment and that character that comes together, right? And so I'm in that moment in my life and career where having opportunities like this to be able to come full circle and have this conversation with you reminds me of the 24-year-old girl, 25-year-old girl who was racing around just wanting to do it. That's all I wanted to do. I just wanted to do it. I wanted to do this thing that I had inside of me. And we don't know what that path is going to be. We could get that job we think is going to change our life, and it's the most miserable thing in the world. Or it could be the most wonderful thing in the world. We don't know. And so
it's a journey, right? And it's a journey of self-discovery and finding the roles that you're right for, and creating the communities that are going to nurture you and catapult you into your dreams. Dreaming by itself is really nothing. Dreaming with work and talent and collaboration and community and growth and change is where it's at. And that evolution is what's exciting about being an artist and being in a community with creative people like you.
Thank you. And you. And it's the best parts. I thank you for being one of the best parts of my journey. Thank
you.
Thank you for the opportunities that you've brought to me, and thank you for your belief, because we certainly know that, with every wonderful connection, there's also some that are not. And so it's wonderful to be able to look at and connect the dots of all those wonderful things of one's life and journey, and be able to now not only appreciate them, but speak about them. So thank you, John.
Thank you.